Excellent. Welcome back. I'm so glad to see actually quite a few faces today again. Hope you all had a good night. Who had a good night? Who has a sore head? Very good, yeah. Well, it's the first MacAdUK for us. So we thought we've got to participate in a full experience, and it was great fun. So it's good to be here. I'm not Luke. He's not here today, unfortunately, so we taking over for him. Hopefully we do its justice, because he's prepared for this for quite a while. My name is Michaela, and I'm a systems engineer at Jamf.
And my mic is not on, so you can introduce me.
And this is Chris. Yeah, so his mic isn't on, so I'll introduce him. He's a systems engineer, also at Jamf, but originally coming from the Wandera acquisition. And this is actually what we're going to talk about today, the Jamf Security Cloud. Now, you're all familiar with, hopefully, with Jamf. Who isn't familiar with Jamf? Okay, I love this. This is the right audience, you know. So we're going to talk about security today. It's been a growing demand in that space, especially when it comes to Mac. So we will be touching on what's new when it comes to Jamf security. And through the Wandera acquisition, there are actually a couple of things that we'll be touching on. And this falls into three categories: the Jamf data policy and threat defense, which we will cover in one aspect, and then Jamf Private Access. We will leave time at the end for Q&A, but there's also the app where you can submit questions throughout. So feel free to submit questions if something pops into your head and it hasn't been answered throughout. And of course, at the end, you can come onto stage and ask your question too. Does that sound good? Well, what's new? As I already mentioned, the Wandera acquisition. And has anyone come across Wandera before? Hands up. Yeah, okay, so some of you have heard of Wandera before. We still try to, get used to the new terminology, because of course now it's really Jamf security. So don't catch us up on the fact if we say Wandera. Now, what's new? Couple of things. But let me start with an overview of where Jamf has originally come from. For those who've been around for the last 20 years, Jamf Pro is very much our flagship product. It's been around for that amount of time, but we've built onto that. And now we expanded our portfolio, which falls into these three categories: managing your device, connecting your users, and protecting your data. In addition to Jamf Pro, for managing your devices, we would be looking at Jamf Now for the SMB market, specifically tailored to that audience. With Jamf Now, we actually expanded this a little bit and brought in elements of Jamf Connect and Protect into Jamf Now, which is called Jamf Fundamentals. Yeah? So we really try to address our market and the needs of the smaller customers, where often budget can be a challenge. And third point, when it comes to managing your devices, is education and Jamf School. Has anyone been to BET last week, the conference? No? So this conference, okay, there we go. We were there too. And as mentioned yesterday in some of the sessions as well, in education, Jamf or Apple devices become extremely popular. It's not like back in the days where, if the TV was rolled into the room, that was a big thing. Now everyone, or a lot of schools and universities, work with devices and technology. So Jamf focuses on that with Jamf School. Next point, Jamf Connect allows you to connect your devices to your identity provider, like Microsoft, Okta, Google, you name them, allowing user creation and authentication, as well as password synchronization. And last but not least, Jamf Protect. Now, today is all about security, and this is where Jamf Protect also falls under. For some of you, you may already familiar with Jamf Protect, focusing on macOS only. But of course, macOS isn't the only Apple products that are out there. And this is where we will touch on data policy, private access, and threat defense. Yeah, so you can see how they fall into the three different aspects. And Chris will cover more on this in the following. I hand over my clicker. Thanks. I will be back for the questions.
Thanks very much, Michaela. So I'd like to address the elephant in the room with regards to our product set. It's a couple of dirty words. If you're feeling a bit queasy from last night, then you might want to cover your ears. But we are a multi-OS platform, so we also support Windows and Android, as well as the full Apple suite of devices. So, as everyone will know, the perimeter has fallen. COVID has accelerated probably 15 years worth of remote working within a 2-year period, and organizations are no longer requiring users to be on premise. Users are now able to work remotely from anywhere in the world, from home, from cafes, and with the advent of that, legacy technologies such as VPN don't really fit the need anymore. So using the Jamf Security Cloud, we're able to help organizations keep their users secure and productive wherever they are in the world. So the first two products I'd like to showcase today are our data policy and threat defense. And what we find a lot of the time is that customers, when they come and talk to us, are really interested in talking to us about these two as a package together. So Jamf data policy covers two main things. One is around cellular data capping. The other is much more focused on content filtering and allowing organizations to manage those users more effectively. So the web content and filtering allows organizations to filter both at a cellular and a Wi-Fi level on any number of different sites and applications, regardless of where a user is connecting on their device. At cellular specifically, organizations can connect and protect users for domestic as well as when they're roaming. So we can provide policy that allows difference for both. And from an organization's perspective, a lot of the time, we talk to organizations, they feel like they have a really good idea of what users are doing on their devices, but we tend to encourage them to roll the solution out and let it sit and soak for a period of time, maybe 4 weeks or so. And what that allows them to do is to use the service to collect all of those data points from their user base and then use that to drive their policy decisions about what they're going to look to manage. From a user perspective, we push an app to the device, and that gives really good transparency for the users. They can see exactly what policies and processes have been set down by the organization. They can see exactly what sites and apps are being blocked on a cellular or Wi-Fi level, but it also provides them with an education to be able to make better decisions about what they use on their device, as well as the connectivity that they use to access them. The capping and alerts is really simple. So from an admin's perspective, they can set capping down by user or group basis and allows them to receive alerts as well as look at good data points from the reporting, which can be viewed at either a device or a user basis or by sites and apps. And we have flexible deployment options. This can be pushed to a managed device or it can be deployed on a BYOD device. And as I said at the start, that's multi-OS. So Luke isn't here with us today, but he has recorded a couple of demos, so I'd just like to play that one for you. Just have a look at the product.
Jamf data policy with a user-driven workflow. Here we have a user device. It has Jamf data policy configured. What I'm going to do is launch the Jamf Trust app, which is our user-facing app that helps to communicate policy that's being applied to the device in a way that's simple and transparent for users. As you can see at the top, our user has about 6 GB of data remaining. The user is told that our corporate monthly contract will refresh in 13 days. It's a great feature that users are given visibility to how much data they have and how long they have to be able to use it before it refreshes. You can see that we've opted to leverage content filtering that's slightly different across Wi-Fi and cellular interfaces. We're connected to a Wi-Fi network, and you'll see that if we navigate to LinkedIn, we can access the content successfully. If we close the tab out and we toggle the Wi-Fi to off and instead opt to leverage our corporate SIM in the device, you'll see that we are unable to access LinkedIn. This is because on our cellular connection, we've blocked access to all social media sites. The user receives a push notification which takes them back to the Jamf Trust app and explains exactly why it is they've been able to access that website.
So Luke will be back in a little while with a couple of other demos as well. So moving on to Jamf Threat Defense. This is our on-device as well as in-network threat defense capability, which is backed up by our AI and machine learning, which provides really strong zero-day phishing capability on the device. So as I said, our network protection is not just local on the device or just in the network. We provide both, and we believe that that gives us best in class for our threat detection and prevention. We are able to do zero-day phishing detection, and that's based on our machine learning in the background. If a user is accessing a zero-day phishing link from the device, and that doesn't matter if that's from an SMS, from WhatsApp, via a URL or an email, for example, the service looks at that URL. It will analyze a number of different heuristics to determine whether that is suspicious. And if it scores above a certain threshold, that link will then be blocked in real time and the user will be given a notification to explain what's happened. From an Apple perspective, really interestingly, we're also able to detect man-in-the-middle attacks. And in real time, we can throw up a VPN around those attacks to encrypt the data and stop exfiltration of any of that data to a suspicious actor. And again, notify the user in real time so that they can make a decision to move away from that network. Our threat scoring can also be used via UEM integration, such as Jamf Pro, to provide information to the UEM to do conditional access policy as well. And again, I'm just going to bring Luke back. So this is an internal tool that we use to demo to customers called Hacksaw, and that allows us to spoof a phishing attack from a number of different sites. So without further ado.
To demonstrate these types of attacks to customers. What I'm going to do in a second is in the console, I'm going to choose to launch a Dropbox style phishing attack. So it'll send a text to our user pretending to act as a Dropbox notification. We'll then use this to steal the user's credentials. So what we're going to do is choose Dropbox from the options in the attack launcher. I am going to create a new device and I'm going to choose iOS from the platform drop-down menu. And then I'm going to stick in my phone number. Now this is my real phone number, so the eagle-eyed viewers in the crowd will be able to attempt to phish me later. Please, please don't. I then customize the text message and I try to make it a little bit more believable. In this instance, I'm going to tell the user that they have a Dropbox document that needs their attention, and I'm going to make reference to the company they work for in the body of the text. Looks pretty convincing to me. So then I'm going to hit launch attack. I bring my iPhone up on screen and we can see a pretty convincing looking text message. My iPhone even labels the text as being from Dropbox. The link isn't a Dropbox link, of course, but it looks pretty convincing. So our user taps the link and they're taken to an imitation of the Dropbox website. And our user begins to enter their corporate email address and password. And it's a good time to remind you of that 10% of those users will fall for these sorts of attacks. Once the user taps submit, you can see on the left-hand side of the screen that our credentials are captured by the attacker. The user is then prompted for a code from their authenticator, which the user is quick to supply. At this point, our attacker has an email address, a password, and the authentication code that they need to access the user's account. And for those of us that have been savvy enough not to fall for these sorts of phishing attacks in the past, it's a good opportunity to see how convincing these sorts of attacks can be.
So Luke touched on a key point there, and that is that when an attacker spoofs a message via SMS specifically, our phones really want to be helpful in trying to group conversations from the same sender repeatedly. So the fact that this has come through as Dropbox, if that user is using that service regularly or Office 365, so they're engaging with Microsoft for their 2FA codes, that conversation history will drop into the same chain as the rest of their legitimate history and look really, really authentic as long as the construct of the text message is convincing enough for the user. There's a good chance that they'll follow it. So Luke's also done a second video here which shows what that attack would look like if it was on a device that had Jamf Threat Defense in place.
So let's have a look at Jamf Threat Defense in context. So what you'll see in a second is we have a similar phishing attack to the one that you saw at the beginning of the presentation. Our user is going to receive a notification, purportedly from Office 365, The text appears to come from Office 365 and appears convincing enough that our user seems to want to trust it. You'll see immediately that the user is blocked from accessing the content. Jamf Trust sends a notification to the user. The user taps on the notification and is brought to the Jamf Trust app. It's explained to the user that the device was attempting to communicate with a phishing website. And as you can see, with Jamf Threat Defense, both data and corporate data are secured, and it's all managed in a simple and elegant way that's transparent to the user.
Awesome. So moving on to private access. Now, private access isn't necessarily independent of the other two solutions. Actually, the threat defense really bolsters the private access capability because we can leverage some of those security posture pieces into our conditional access service. So private access is our solution for remote access for enterprises, whether they're accessing services that are in the cloud or if they're on-prem. And as I said before, we are multi-OS, so this supports any app and on any device. So what is Zero Trust? For me, the key building block of Zero Trust is that any user and any device is now perceived as a risk to a business, and the user either needs to prove that they are who they say they are, and the device needs to be proven to be secure before any access to corporate applications is granted. And in a world where lots of organizations are using legacy VPN solutions, that doesn't quite cut it nowadays, especially with, as I said before, users moving to remote working, all of that traffic going back into a LAN environment and then having to be turned around to access cloud resources as organizations move to hybrid or full cloud deployments doesn't really work anymore, especially on a device where once you've placed that VPN solution onto the device, you don't do any further security checks to make sure that that device continues to be safe to access your services. And legacy VPN also provides full lateral movement across an organization's infrastructure, which provides an attacker with an unlimited surface to go after if they do get access to the network. So why is ours different? So our solution is Zero Trust. It's based on an integration with the organization's IDP, such as Microsoft or Okta, and that's the foundational building block of our solution, where a user that's trusted within the organization and managed via that IDP creates a relationship with a device that's now also trusted. Once that trust is in place, then our solution continues constantly to assess the security posture of that device to provide continual conditional access to either cloud resources or on-prem resources. It works on a per-app VPN, so we're not continually tunneling all user traffic into our service. Only the apps that are defined in policy will be sent encrypted into our cloud service and then onward routed as part of that piece. And from a user's perspective, we want that to look as native on the device as possible. The user experience is key here. So we use a protocol called WireGuard, which was originally conceived as a streaming service for lots of online gaming, which is incredibly fast. And over the top of that, we've leveraged our enterprise level features to provide really secure, fast, and as it says, transparent access for users. And again, for the last time, Luke's going to give us a quick demo of what that looks like.
On the subject of unmanaged devices, I would like to preface this next demo by saying that I'm going to show Jamf Private Access working here on a personal unmanaged device, so effectively a BYOD device, and it will make sense why I'm doing that in a moment. So here's my unmanaged iPad. The user is currently remotely accessing the web version of Office 365. It's currently their kind of option of choice. That's the way that they've decided to access the service rather than using the apps in this instance. Luke's Really Cool Company wants to ensure that all our users, be they BYOD or Jamf Pro managed devices, are leveraging the power of Jamf Private Access to ensure that remote access is achieved securely. So in a second, you'll see in the demo that our user is able to launch Office 365. They've already logged into their account, so you won't see them go through the login process, but what we'll be able to see is that they can access Office 365 and they can access their Outlook account. What the user's going to do then is they're going to close the accounts, and what we've decided at Luke's Really Cool Company, is that going forwards, we want to require all our BYOD users to be leveraging Jamf Private Access before they can access internal services. So we'll have the user walk through that process, that setup process, as part of this demo. So what we'll do then is have the user open up Google. They'll launch 365, and you can see they're already logged in and they can access their Outlook account just fine. But as I mentioned, we want to transition everybody to Jamf Private Access. So what they're going to do is close out the tab. They'll launch the Jamf Trust app and tap on Sign In with Microsoft. During this step, the user is authenticated against Microsoft services. As we've already done this recently, we bypass straight through this step. We want to allow Wandera to implement our private access solution by tapping Allow. And that's it. The user's enrolled and they're now able to take advantage of private access. In the top right-hand corner, we've got some notifications on the bell icon, and we saw a push notification pop up. Earlier, I talked about Jamf Threat Defense being able to provide device-based threat scoring, which we're seeing deployed here. Our device is reporting an old version of the operating system, which is identified as a risk. And as you can see in the app, the particular user has disabled the PIN code on their device, which again contributes to the risk score on the device. If you didn't quite catch it, you'll see it in a moment. So the user's gone back now that they've got private access, and they've attempted to access Office 365 again. And you saw that the user was blocked from doing so. The user tapped on the notification to understand why they couldn't access Office 365 in this instance. On a Jamf Pro managed device, we could step in and manage this control ourselves, but where the user is providing their own device, like in this example with a BYOD device, we're able to use Jamf Private Access and Threat Defense to ensure that the device is secure before allowing access to cloud apps, on-prem apps, and services.
Nice. Just to finish on that point, as I said earlier at the start, we're doing this on a per app basis. So what that allows organizations to do is create a policy on a per app basis that is assigned to specific groups of users to stop that lateral movement that I mentioned, as well as the ability to set different threat scores dependent on the service. So it might be that on-prem is set with a really high risk level, that unless a device comes through with is either secure or a low risk score, you're not going to grant access to those services. But maybe your cloud, you might be prepared to accept medium risk. And although we didn't cover it on the threat defense element, all of the threats that are listed on the platform that are available can also be amended. So as an organization, if you want to amend the threat scores that you perceive a vulnerable OS is higher than a medium risk score, you can elevate that risk to custom and tailor it to your organization and make sure it fits your need. So I'm happy that you can be gentle, or we can go very hard if some of these questions are going to be tough, but I don't know, have you got anything in the app, Michaela?
Back on? There we go. I don't think actually you need me up here because there aren't any questions so far. So if anyone has questions...
In which case, it's on the floor. So you can set the access policy on a per app or service basis. And what that allows you to do is to allocate that application to groups of users or everyone within your organization, and then to set a risk threshold that you're prepared to allow devices through to access that service. Yeah.
Thanks, Mike. So the risk policy is a per application? Yes. Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Of course, we are also still all here. This has, by the way, been a bit of teamwork now, which actually worked out quite nicely, didn't it? Luke presenting and then us being here on stage. So feel free, if a question pops into your mind, come and meet us upstairs. Otherwise, enjoy the rest